in, Southern California. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
All right, great to be back with you, everyone. This is Mike Alexander, Radio Free Los Angeles. If you'd like to be part of the program, you can reach us at 866-870-5752 or 866-870-KRLA. Our website is am870theanswer.com, Inside Advantage page. We love having you here this evening during this wonderful Advent season as we approach Christmas. As you know, I wasn't here last Sunday because my wife and I were traveling back to the East Coast to visit for Thanksgiving for at least two of our children. So we and several of our grandchildren. It was a lot of fun. It's also great to be back in California. And I can tell you, even though the weather was moderate in Washington, D.C., it's nothing compared to our climate. It just seems like a great idea not to leave this state, but to pack up all of the destructive big government people and ship them out of the state. In fact, they can all go back there to Virginia, although I'd get in a big fight with my son. He said they got too many of them back there already. In any event, I'm really happy to be here with you tonight so that we can continue our discussion. You know, this evening, in fact, I was almost late to get here to the show because I was at one of my favorite places, which is St. Monica Academy, that is now located in Montrose, California. It is a small, private, independent Catholic school based with a classical curriculum that we were proud to be part of founding almost 20 years ago now, and the school is thriving and doing its job. But don't get too stuck on the Catholic part. What this really represented was a lot of parents who were dissatisfied with the educational experience that they were having in public schools and even in some private schools that they were at. Either the scholastic and academic standards weren't where they needed to be, or the moral and religious formation that they wanted for their children were not available or not being properly done. So they set about, a group of them, to create a new private school, and it is now so successful. Many of our students have gone on to college, to the professions. Many of them, we've had at least one graduate from the Naval Academy, two more on the way. We have young people that are going into all the professions, into law school, into business and accounting, and so many of them carrying on the tradition of being just having good, solid families, getting married, and building their futures together. It is so worthwhile. And when you stop to think that here in the state of California, we spend so much more money per student on average in public schools than they spend than they receive or spend over at this wonderful school, and they get so much less for their money. I know all the reasons, all the excuses, but on average, students should be able to get access to that same quality of education anywhere. They should be able to choose. They should be free to choose. That is what we have to do. And, it's part, when you stop to think about it, very often our discussions about education boil down to issues of safety or objecting to this or that aspect of the education that's not working, that's not good enough. But when you really stop to think about what the schools represent. They represent a terrible loss of our freedom. And the issue that I'd like to discuss with you in the hour and a half that we have together tonight is the overall subject of freedom. Just as a general matter, I would like your input as to how free you think that we are here in California and in the United States. Are we still the freest country on the earth? Are we becoming less free? If we're becoming less free, how so? Where is it at? As you might imagine, I have my own thoughts in the matter, and I think that we're not terribly free anymore. For example, you have to, depending upon your tax bracket, you're paying somewhere between a third and a half of your net income over to the government at any given time. You don't even own your own wages. How about that house that you own? Well, first of all, if you buy a house somewhere in the Los Angeles area in a nice neighborhood, that nice house in a nice neighborhood can now cost you almost $1 million. In other words, you're going to have to pay a significant tax bill there every month. It'll run 1%, so you're going to pay the government, the county of Los Angeles, about 1% a year. It could be at least $10,000 plus whatever other taxes, parcel taxes or what have you, that you have in your neighborhood. It's not unusual for somebody to go back into a neighborhood and have a tax bill, an assessment bill of $1,000 a month on their new house, on top of an $8,000 or $10,000. Well, it probably wouldn't be that much in $1 million house, but you've got a $4,000 or $5,000 payment, $6,000 plus another $1,000 or $1,200 to the government. How free is that? You're basically just renting your own property back from the government after you bought it. So when you look at what you're paying to these people, you're paying a tremendous amount. Now, even though you're renting it back from the government after you bought it, you find yourself in the situation where you can't really improve your property except by jumping through a lot of hoops. And then guess what? You've got to pay them in order to improve your own property and to fight with them about what improvements you want to make. Limitation on square footage, so forth and so on. Now, I can hear some people out there, especially those who are professionally in real estate, I can hear you saying to me, well, hey, Mike, if we didn't have all these rules and regulations, people would just be building anything anywhere, and we would lose control. So this is the way that a community is able to exert some control over the quality of the community. Well, I get that and I understand it, and it sounds okay on paper, but in practice, the people really own it are the politicians and the government unions and the people who live down there at City Hall or county or wherever it is, Department of Engineering, and they're sitting there telling you what you're going to do with your property. And the input of the public is precious little. It's a lot of very special interests that are constantly lobbying and contributing to the campaigns of politicians so that they can actually exercise more control and exert more influence on that process than the rest of the general public. So it's personal, private interests, special interests, if you will, who have more impact on the ownership of your property than you or the so-called public. There's nothing public. It's all an elite that grows there. Let's talk about your free speech rights when it comes to elections and so forth. And what brought this to mind was an article that I came across here earlier today, courtesy of our friend Steve Frank, who runs California News and Political Views .com. I'll give you the website there in a minute. Oh, I'm looking for the article. I can't find it. I'll tell you what it is because I do recall. But there is a proposal right here in the, I believe, in the city of Los Angeles and elsewhere to prevent developers from making campaign contributions to politicians. So this would leave the people. Yeah, here it is. It's Los Angeles to ban developers from donating to campaigns, while unions are allowed to own the city unhindered, in effect. So notice that the people who have an impact on planning and on zoning and everything else, and are trying to build things in this state, and are forced to come to the government bureaucracy for permission to build on their own property, understand, whether they're individuals, big business, big developers, small developers, whoever, these people will not be able to contribute money to the people who run for office. But no matter, the unions will be exempted. So all the public employee unions who negotiate directly with the people that they elect in order to get higher wages and salaries, those people will not be prohibited from investing. They'll be able to do whatever the hell they want. So you can't even express yourself properly there. They're going to limit how you influence your own government. Now, I can hear people saying out there, well, that'll never hold up or whatever. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it shows you the mindset of the government that we're dealing with. And these cities like Los Angeles control the use and development of hundreds of billions of dollars worth of property. Well, how free are we, ladies and gentlemen, if we have to go down there and argue with basically public employee unions about how we're going to use our property? Public schools, they tax the hell out of you. We got 6 million kids in this state. 5.5 million of them go to the public schools. And let me tell you, it's not because they're so great. It's because economically they can't afford to go anywhere else. So how free are you to educate your own children? If they take your money, and believe me, it comes from taxes, you're going to be paying those taxes forever. You're paying for that education. Don't let them kid you. Oh, the government's paying, the city's paying. Hell no, they're not. You're paying, and all taxpayers are paying, and because of the way that so-called education is funded in the state of California, you're going to pay that for the rest of the time that you live here in California. So no matter what, you are going to pay for that education. So since it's your money and your kids, it damn well ought to be your choice. So how free are you if they steal your money, steal it forever, and force you to send your kids there? And then, on top of it, you've got no control over what they're taught. You cannot ensure that they're taught the basic subjects, and then on top of it, they're indoctrinated and often interfered with the so-called sex ed. It's absolutely outrageous. Well, we have one caller, my old friend Mike from El Segundo, who would like to weigh in on this topic. Michael, how are you this evening, sir?
Okay, other than the fact that we've lost a lot of freedom and we're losing it very rapidly as the Democrat Party consolidates its power, as it moves forward on its drive for absolute power, for unlimited power in government.
Yes.
And to establish their Marxist dictatorship. But before I go more into that, I have an important question for you. I want to ask your opinion.
Sure.
The city of El Segundo, the city council voted to put a measure on the ballot this March to change our elected city treasurer to an appointed city treasurer, which obviously would have a lot more salary and, I believe, more benefits, and it would, I believe, take away a check and balance in our city government. But I want to ask you what your opinion is on that.
Yeah, I've got it. Excuse me. I have mixed feelings about that. To a certain extent, a city, well, not a certain extent. If we look at it on its face, the city treasurer is the chief financial officer of the city, and as such should be directly responsible to the city council. And in that sense, appointing him probably makes sense. The disadvantages of someone running for city treasurer who lacks the financial background is equally obvious. But the downside of it is that the average citizen It doesn't take a brilliant guy or a CPA or, a Big Four, Big Five accountant to understand what cities have to do. But still, I tend to favor electing that treasurer because it is an opportunity for outside influence. And if you look at, in fact, I'll ask you in just a minute here, but if you look at the reasons why they want to do it, there's probably the answer probably lies there. And my experience with the city council is that they sit there and they take the data feed from the city mismanager and the other financial people there who, in effect, cook the books and then give the city council the data. So I don't even see, and this is an appointed position, I see it as a further consolidation of political and financial control in the hands of the unions and the bureaucracy. What is your impression of it down there, Mike? You were once a city councilman in El Segundo.
That's right. And as I recall, when I was on city council, that was in the 1990s, 1992, 96, as I recall, I believe the city council approved an investment policy for the city's money, which provided some safety or guardrails for the city treasurer. Because, as you know, public funds, government, the money that government receives from our taxes is supposed to be invested in quite conservative investments. And I believe Orange County had a problem a number of years ago where I believe their treasurer, I don't know if that was elected or appointed, but I believe their treasurer invested the money in somewhat risky, higher yield investments, and I believe they lost a lot of money.
They did, and they ended up in bankruptcy.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. That was my memory of that.
Yeah, when we look at this, this one of these things that we've had both elected and appointed chief financial officers in our in municipal government for years and years and years, and yet each and every one of these municipal entities has two things in common. They're on the brink, number one. Most of them are insolvent.
Bankruptcy.
Brink of insolvency. And number two, they're lying about it on their financials. And
They are lying, especially with the unfunded liabilities for these CalPERS pensions and for school districts, the CalSTARS, CalSTARS pensions.
Correct.
And it's just unbelievable what's going on. When I was on city council, the city manager, city staff would play a game with the city council to basically, in my opinion, lie about the budget increases. So what they would do is, in the budget document, we were on an annual budget cycle, which I prefer as opposed to 2 years or longer. The budget to be adopted every year. And what they do is they'd have a column for last year's actual expenditures, actual money spent for all the different departments and categories. And then they would have the new proposed spending. In fact, I think they actually had for the previous year, they may have had the proposed budget, the actual budget, and then the new proposed budget. And what they would always do is compare the new proposed budget to the previous year's actual budget and say, oh, we only have like 3% increase this year in spending, which was a lie, because when you compare, you have to compare proposed to proposed and actuals to actuals to get honest comparison. So they might have a 10% spending increase or more, and misrepresented is only 3%, because during the year, city staff members, department heads, and obviously staff members, the city manager, they would keep coming to council throughout the year asking for more approval for more expenditures that they did not include in their original request, because they knew it would not be included, it would not be approved if it was compared in terms of priorities with all the other expenditures. So I set a rule when I was on city council. Unfortunately, I got my colleagues on the city council to agree with me. So we set an official rule that when we were going through the budget approval process, that any items that were not requested at that time would have to wait till next year's budget, unless it met one of a few criteria. One is it was a true, absolute, unforeseen emergency, or two, it could be honestly demonstrated that it would save more money than it would cost. And we still, even after I got that rule set on our city council in El Segundo, we still had staff members putting on the agenda requests for more money, and we kept turning them down.
Yes.
And
Mike, what was your
the way government grows?
What was your? It is. What was your labor factor when were you on the council? What, 10 years
From
ago? 15?
1992 to 96. And by the way, back then,
Yeah.
we had lowest level firefighters making already over $100,000 a year back then.
Yeah, back then.
And now with total compensation, including the pension contributions and the cost of their benefits, everything, they're making. Some of them, they're making $280,000, $300,000, $350,000 a year. Same with the police. It's just amazing how much money they're making. And if the public knew all this, for example, they would vote absolutely no on that county fire department measure
Yes.
that the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors are putting on the ballot, I think for March. I'm not sure when it will be on the ballot. And what they're asking for, I heard a news report, and I hope that is not true. I have to look up the county resolution, see what it says, that is putting that on the ballot. But the news report said it's going to charge a 6% parcel tax.
What?
Which is enormous, a 6%
Wow.
parcel tax to pay for more Los Angeles County firefighters and more equipment. Well, they're so
6%?
overpaid. If they want more firefighters, stop overpaying them so much.
6% of what?
Good question. I assume the assessed value.
I mean, my
that's
God.
just unbelievable. So, and is that every year, or is that a one-time deal?
Wow.
So I'm hoping that news report is incorrect, that was an error. But we should not have to pay any more taxes for that. We're already paying for that.
No.
We have government taxing us over and over for the same things. Like in El
Yes.
Segundo, we never used to have to pay for trash collection again because we're already paying for that. Our property taxes. Property taxes
Right.
are supposed to pay for services. And what the cities and the county have been doing is they've started charging separate taxes for all those different things that were already included in the property taxes. But they're
Right.
not lowering or eliminating the property taxes.
No. I think the graduated property tax, that is taxing property by a percentage of its value.
Valuation. That is wrong. That is
It
so
is
wrong.
And when you stop to think how government, and ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you're not going to sleep or thinking of turning this off because Mike and Mike are talking these numbers. This is where your liberties are disappearing. There's a reason why smart guys like Mike and myself, with, I say with all humility here, there's a reason why smart guys talk about this, because that's really where the bodies are buried. That's where
Right,
we're
and
being
because
attacked.
the school teachers don't teach this stuff because they're paid by the government, they want taxes
Right.
to go up and up and up. They're working to repeal Proposition 13, using a divide and conquer approach to repeal it first for commercial properties, then come back and repeal it for residential properties, and then the businesses won't help campaign against it when they're raising on homeowners.
Right.
And that's why homeowners have to vote no for repealing Proposition 13 for the businesses. And plus, the businesses will pass on their increased taxes to us as customers as a cost of doing business, or they'll not be able to afford to go out of business, and we'll have less tax base, we'll have less jobs, and it will, of course, hurt the economy.
Yes, and look, ladies and gentlemen, how this fraud works. Now, stay with me for a second. You heard the first part of my rant where I was talking about restrictive zoning and very expensive and drawn out building plans, getting how tough it is to...
Oh, and the environmental code, the green code costs, I think it has on an extra 1/3 or so.
That's right. Hey, Mike, I want you to hang on because I think we've got an opportunity to make some progress here in context here. The music is stay on with me till after the break. This is Mike Alexander. Josh Jacobs is not with me tonight, or Jonathan Wilson, so it's me right here with you. Call us in 866-870-5752. Back with you after the break.
Come in, Southern California. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and Editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, back with you here. Mike Alexander here, Radio Free Los Angeles. Don't forget to be part of our program here. Call us at 866-870-5752. And don't forget that this is listener, citizen-supported radio. To help us, go to californiaschoolchoice.org. Give us your name there. That will help us here at Radio Free Los Angeles. It'll enlist you in the crusade for freedom and education. It'll help us to get the word out here about the terrible state of California's education here and the real viable market solutions that are available. When you go there, give us your name, but also give us some love, give us some support. $5 a month, $10 a month. Whatever you can afford out there, it will help us get this message out. And remember, as we like to say here, don't say that you support school choice or support freedom if you don't support school choice and freedom. It takes an investment. I'm going to talk more about that later. In the meanwhile, I want to get back with our friend here, Mike from El Segundo, and continue our conversation. Are you there, Michael?
I sure am.
Excellent. Good. Now, where we were here, the point that I was going to make about zoning and regulation and costly construction and how it feeds into the increase in property prices. If you look at how these people operate, they're actually incentivized to reduce the supply of real estate. I don't think it's smart for them to do that, but they do it. They reduce the supply of housing. They limit it, driving the cost of these properties up. And at the same time, because of the way property taxes and assessments work, they operate to increase revenues, which are based upon a percentage of the valuation. Now, as a matter of fact, they'd be a lot better off if we just created more real estate and more housing, more development, more everything, let the free market operate. But when you look at how these guys do it, they actually profit from driving up the cost of real estate, and then they turn around and try to tell their homeowners and their citizens and their constituents in the cities about how good their government is because property values in El Segundo, Monrovia, Pasadena, whatever it is, are rising. It's a racket, isn't it, Mike?
It's a total racket. In fact, as you recall, the Department of Motor Vehicles in California was boasting about how it had given out official driver's licenses to more than 1 million illegal aliens. Of course, they call them probably undocumented immigrants.
Right.
They're illegal aliens. That's the correct legal term and correct, accurate, honest, descriptive term. So that means you've got more than 1 million illegal aliens in California because that represents, families as well. So basically you have millions of illegal aliens in California and they need housing too. Now, oftentimes they might live 5 or 10 people or more in a small apartment, and causing various problems in neighborhoods, but not always. The thing is that they're taking up a lot of housing. Mm-hmm. Now, with zoning laws, having served on city council especially, understand there are good zoning laws and there's bad ones. If you want to live in a neighborhood that has only single-family homes and invest money in that, spend a lot of your money, to have that home and raise your family there, I think you have a right to not have 4-story high-density housing going up next door to you or right down the block. So the idea of zoning, when it's done right, is you have transitions from heavy industry to medium industry to maybe light manufacturing industry to retail sales and hotels maybe.
Sure.
Then to like maybe R3 zone, 3 per lot, then to R2 and then R1 and try to have a good stock of R1 housing as well. Mm-hmm. And you don't want spot zoning. You don't want, developers coming in, giving big campaign contributions to the city council candidates and members and then getting approved to rezone or get variances just for their property, and all of a
Right.
sudden you have R3 in the middle of R1 or something.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
zoning's important, but
Or
then a lot
worse
of
yet, though, we have the government, and they're trying to do this from Washington. They tried this stunt with Obama, and they're trying it. They've tried it a number of times up in Sacramento, trying to mandate the rezoning of cities for so-called low-cost housing, as if there were
It's
such a
going on
thing.
in our state legislature passed
Yeah.
a law that allows you to, and this I think is really catering to illegal aliens, many of them probably living in converted garages or barely converted garages and renting them out. And what they did, they passed a law saying that in the R1 zone now, it's effectively an R2 zone. You can have two on a lot because they're saying that you can convert a garage or get a converted garage approved in the R1 zone. And then they have this law, it may be the same one, maybe a different law, about what they call auxiliary, ADUs, auxiliary dwelling units.
Yeah.
And if I understand, there's a state legislator, either assemblyman or senator from San Francisco that doesn't really care much for families. And from San Francisco, a guy who's been writing or sponsoring a lot of this legislation to upzone, have high density, small units. They're not really for families. They're for people who don't have families.
Right.
And even, so supposedly luxury units like that, where his bill would have allowed, as I understand it, one of his bills, I think, did not get passed yet. He'll just keep coming back till he gets it passed. That's what the Democrats do.
Yeah.
But his bill would allow, I think, even 8-story high-density apartments in the R1 zones, even if it's within a certain distance from a bus stop or from a light rail station, et cetera. And like in El Segundo, about 3/4 of our land is commercial, and we like it that way because there's lots of jobs, a big tax base, and our residential area is high quality, but it's only about 1/4 of the land mass. And then we're under pressure from these communist Democrats in the state legislature where they want to tell us, oh no, you don't have a proper jobs to housing balance. You need more housing. And if places have too much housing, they'll probably tell them you have to bring in factories into your nice residential neighborhood.
Right.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Mostly you want the free market to work this out with some planning and zoning just so you don't get someone putting in, heavy manufacturing next to an R1 zone. Some zoning is appropriate, but what's happening now is this thing totally corrupted where the Democrats are trying to torture people out of their cars. They're creating these bottlenecks on purpose, like in Venice Boulevard in Los Angeles.
Right.
How they took away one traffic lane each direction.
Yeah. What do they call it? Road diets? Isn't that
road diets? Right. And they converted it to a bicycle lane.
Yeah, we had one of the guys
vote only Republican on that alone. Not to mention the constant tax increases and everything else. This tax on Measure W that was on last November's ballot, November 2018, that created a new tax, a new property tax based on your square footage of non-permeable area on your property. So your rooftop, your driveway. So even if you have gutters, rain gutters that collect the water that comes off your roof and puts it into your garden, that doesn't matter. It's all a scam where they want to charge you, create more new taxes and increase the existing taxes without limit.
This
is government tyranny what's going on in California.
So everybody, and by the way, it's not a criticism of Mike, but Mike is a guy who knows the weeds, gets in the weeds, knows how important the weeds are. Rising up from the weeds, his major comment there that you need to understand and that we talk about here on this program all the time is, I want to attribute this to him. I'll take ownership. I call it a fraud, a hustle, and a con. It's all designed to generate ever greater amounts of money for the government people, the government class, and to take our freedoms away. And when you take all of our property rights away.
Right. It is stealing our money, our property rights, stealing our freedom. In fact, the Democrat supermajority in our state legislature in California, as you know, they passed the rent control law after the voters voted no on the rent control law.
That's right.
When it was put on the state ballot.
They're in our face. So bottom line, Mike, and I think I know what the answer is, but bottom line, are we more free or less free than we were a year ago or 5 years ago?
We are much, much less free, and if the founders were alive today, they would be calling for a revolution
Yes.
to restore our constitutional Republican form of government as a constitutional republic. We're not a democracy. You know, when you go to the Washington Post website, the top of every web page has a little slogan there they put in there after Trump was elected, as I recall, and it says,
Yes.
democracy dies in darkness. That's fake news on every one of their web pages. We are not a democracy, as you know. If you read the Constitution, you read the Federalist Papers, it refers to us, we are a republic, a constitutional republic, for good reason, because a democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to eat for dinner.
That's
And
right,
of course,
exactly.
And liberty is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. That's why the Democrats, the Communist Democrats in office want to take our firearms away, our self-defense firearms, because they know that once you take away the right of the people to keep and bear arms, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, Bill of Rights, they are all nothing but merely pieces of paper and nothing more. They cannot be enforced.
That's right. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, the communication of these ideas to the next generation is critical. The most critical problem that we have right now is K-12, because this is where the government trains the next generation to be subservient. This is where it deliberately deprives them of the knowledge of of their past, of our government and country's past, and induces them to become very compliant, very subservient citizens who just do what they're told. That's why we have to get our children out of this coercive environment and get education back into the hands of parents where we know that they'll do better. I don't care where they came from. I don't care if they're Mexicans or Guatemalan parents, and so many of them are. They could not possibly do worse. Mike, I really appreciate the conversation this evening.
One last thing I want to say, and I need to thank you again. Thank you before.
Sure.
I have to keep thanking you for this. I learned one of the most important things I know now from you, from talking on your radio show in the past. And what that is that stealing elections begins in the public schools.
Yes.
I did not realize that at the time. I had already been tracking a whole bunch of changes in the election laws the Democrats have been making in California to help them steal elections,
Yes.
to make sure they don't lose elections in the future. But then I missed the most important point of all. The greatest way, the most powerful way they steal elections is indoctrinating the children from kindergarten on. And now they want to do it in preschool. They want to have government mandated, government-run preschools, so they'll have more union employees, union teachers to pay union dues and contributions to the Democrat Party. But they want to start indoctrinating children, even younger and younger. They want to rip them out of their mother's arms and start indoctrinating them into Marxism very early.
And even if they don't, even if they drop out and they're unable to recite back the catechism of liberalism or communism, they are at least ignorant, which leaves them just as useful as if they were actual working communists and left wingers.
And they're more easily used by the
That's right,
including those in the mainstream media. I got a fundraising call from a gentleman who just graduated from UCLA who's being paid to, all alumni such as myself, asking for money. And I asked him a few questions, and it turns out he had just graduated with a degree in political science. I asked him, in all of your classes at UCLA, did they ever teach you America's founding principles? He said, no, they just teach the more contemporary, the new modern stuff, which is basically Marxism.
Yeah, it's typical crap. Mike, thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you again soon, my friend.
Oh, thank you. Keep up your great show, and urge your listeners to get their children, their parents, get everyone, more people listening. We have to keep growing and growing our audiences. And just grow the amount of support we can have, because we need it.
Thank you. This paid advertisement has come to you courtesy of Mike in El Segundo. Thank you so much. Next up, Dave in Whittier. How are you this evening?
Hey, Mike. Happy holidays.
Hey, well, I know, not holidays. Either Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, or Happy Hanukkah. Okay. I don't celebrate holidays. I celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah, or the New Year. Right.
It's just not close enough for Christmas to say Merry Christmas for you. But anyway, Merry Christmas. And my key topic today is one that I've been wanting to get on and speak with you about.
Sure.
It's one of the most severe issues that we are dealing with today. And there's, look, there are several aspects of the drug issue that I want to talk about, and that is, foundationally, it's not the detrimental effects of drug use are not being taught in the schools like it was when I was in school, in junior high, here in Orange County in '72. And
that's interesting. Once upon this is a good point. Once upon a time, we were talking about the evils of drug use. Although we used to mock Nancy Reagan for her motto, "Just say no," but we at least did talk about them. What, if anything, is being taught to students in health class or anywhere else about drug usage?
And it's not, and I've heard that when I was active in 2016 with a group called Citizens Against Legalization of Marijuana. I spoke to a Republican club.
Yes.
I got to speak on behalf of our group and the basis of our position against legalization of marijuana. And here's the thing. You're talking about school choice. That's one of the huge reasons why we need to have school choice, because it's not being talked about. And the detrimental, damaging effects, which are huge.
Yes.
I want to just mention a few before I get off the air here with you, okay?
Yes.
And you, look, when I was invited, because I spoke against legalization of marijuana in 2016 to the Anaheim City Council, and I did that for the public, okay? And then the police chief liked what I had to say there in my 3 minutes, and he invited me to a forum on that sponsored by the Anaheim Police Department and the city, and I went to that. So here are a few detrimental effects of marijuana use, and it goes way back to what I learned in '80 from some research from a very popular magazine. Number one, permanent short-term memory damage. Number two.
Makes you a perfect Democrat voter. Okay, good.
Right. Okay, number two, reproductive damage. Mm-hmm. Number three, causes depression, causes kids to drop out of high school. Now, here's some more facts from research I did back in 2016.
Yes.
Lowering of the IQ. Now, this is something I caught from a former senator of Colorado when he was on air. He said, "Doctor, lowering of the IQ by 8 points." Here's another one. This is huge, and this has to do with education. This is why we need to overturn Prop 64, legalization of marijuana in California, and stop it across the country. Listen to this one, Mike. This is huge.
Yes.
Educationally.
No, I'm listening. I think you're right on this, David. Go ahead.
Okay. Birth defects of behavioral and learning problems.
Yes, I have. Since this came out, we all know with drug studies, and they've been conducted by the thousands over the years, particularly since the rise of the Federal Drug Administration and our drug qualification process. And before you can use a drug, you've got to go out there and run it through rigorous testing. Now, I know that the effects of marijuana were studied for many, many generations, but there's another thing that we know about drugs is that even though we go through a very careful qualification process and finally approve it for widespread use, it very often happens that the use of that drug or the deleterious effects of using of that drug, many of the bad effects, will not become known or manifest until there's much wider use of that drug or substance. And
check this one out.
Yeah, and that is what has happened with marijuana, because now we had all the glowing studies before, true, false, or wherever in between. I'm not even going to comment on their scientific sufficiency, but I will say that there's a whole new body of evidence out there that is alarming in the impact of marijuana usage.
Here's a few more real quick. Okay.
Yes, one more that I got to run.
The brain is not fully developed until age 25 or 27.
Mm-hmm.
Washington and Oregon, they found that traffic deaths related to marijuana under the influence of marijuana increased when they legalized marijuana there.
Yes.
So,
that's right. Yeah, and that's a significant social cost. I am a huge opponent of the use of the legalization of marijuana, but also of its use. But among the libertarians and Republicans, we can have that argument about legalization, but for sure, we should not treat use of marijuana as benign in any way. We have to teach the truth about it. Dave, you've raised some very important public policy issues here tonight, and I would encourage you to go to CaliforniaSchoolChoice.org, sign up there, give me a few dollars, but at least sign up there, and also send me an email with those points, because I think they're important and need to be incorporated in our material.
About where this is coming from. They are selling us out. You notice no Democrats spoke out against legalization of marijuana. They should have. Kamala Harris, as Attorney General, could have stopped it in court.
Yeah, they're jonesing for the money, David. It's all about the money. And we'll talk more about that later. David, thanks. Talk to you soon. Next up, my friend Brent from Los Angeles. Are we freer or less free than we were a year or 5 years ago, Brent?
Well, I think we're regaining our freedom. We're demanding it, and we're standing up for it now.
Okay, make your case.
Yeah, but let me wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas. If we don't speak before then.
Well, thank you. And what day is Hanukkah this month? Or what day or days is it?
See, it's a few days before, let's see. It is on the 22nd.
22nd. Okay, well, that's coming up there. Well, hey, that's 2 weeks from now. So happy Hanukkah to you if I don't talk to you sooner.
Thank you.
And, isn't it, I've been reading, I forgot to bring it with me, but a book by a wonderful professor, Erler, I think, out there, E-R-L-E-R, out there at San Bernardino, State College or State University out there, talking about property rights and how what a big part of our rebellion involved the issue of property rights, and how much we struggled to reinforce that concept in the Declaration of Independence, in our Constitution, and in our early politics. And then we look back at totalitarian regimes, and I was just thinking about the Jews when they went after the Jews in Germany. Long before they started killing them, they took their property away. So they had no arms, and sooner or later they had no money. It was confiscated, their property rights, and that left them naked unto their enemies. From then on, it was just a few steps to the bus and to the train and to the camps. It was easy, and so much of the loss of freedom that leads directly to complete control of the person begins with a systematic attack on our property rights. And if we and our property rights aren't worth a damn if we don't defend Warren Buffett's property rights. If we don't, you and I can like or dislike Bezos, or even that who's that jerk that heads up Facebook, Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Zuckerberg. All right.
Zuckerberg.
So you and I can like him or dislike him, but I will not lift one finger against his property rights. Or against his free speech rights. I'm not inclined to break him up or anything else. Once we cross those lines, so we're free. But your view, Brent, is that we are starting to become more free, or at least we're starting to demand it. Hey, that music that sound that you're hearing in the background. Mm-hmm. Think about that question, everybody. And we'll continue my conversation with my good friend Brent after 9 p.m. This is Mike Alexander, Radio Free Los Angeles. We hope that you will join us by calling 866-870-5752 and go to CaliforniaSchoolChoice.org. Give us your name. Give us a little love. Back with you after the 9 o'clock news.
Come in, Southern California. This is Radio Free Los Angeles. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy?
Now transmitting from behind the Iron Curtain in the People's Republic of California, we bring you the voice of free men, free markets, and limited constitutional government. Welcome to citizen-sponsored Radio Free Los Angeles with President of the California Taxpayers Union, Mike Alexander, and editor of the Taxpayer Gazette, Jonathan Wilson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Back with you for the last half hour here of Radio Free Los Angeles. This is Mike Alexander, your host. I'm usually joined here by Josh Jacobs or Jonathan Wilson, but they're both out and about doing other things. So our telephone number here is 866-870-5752. We are talking about our usual issues here, but particularly the issue tonight is, are we more or less free than we were a year ago or 5 years ago? And particularly considering the impact of state and local government here, to say nothing of what's going on in Washington. That's another issue altogether here. But if you'd like to be part of that of our program, call that number, 866-870-5752. And be sure to go to CaliforniaSchoolChoice.org. Give us your name. Give us a little love there. Be part of the revolution here for freedom in education. We're going to continue our conversation with Brent of Los Angeles here. Brent, where the heck were we?
Yes, well, we were talking about freedom and also property and the taking of the confiscation of property one way or the other, either overtly or covertly. And by losing our property, that means we are losing our rights, because property and rights are intimately connected.
To the human person. It's a manifestation of our freedom, of our liberty. It's in fact, I've had this conversation many times about the importance of money. Money isn't the most important thing in the world. And of course, it's not. But it is highly associated with all of the actually most important things in the world. The ability to feed yourself, to feed your family, to advance your country and your community. All of this takes money. And you can't do these things if you don't have control over your time and your labor, because whatever you're paid or the property that's the result of your labor is all your personal, an exercise of your personal freedom. This disjunction and this artificial distinction between capital and labor and property and wealth and so forth. It's absolute nonsense. Now, you said you in your note here you were going to discuss here, according to the note, something about raising property values. Did you call it what, APOZ or something like that?
HPOZ.
Yeah. I'm curious. What's that all about?
That's euphemistically, that's what the city calls a historic preservation overlay zone.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Go ahead.
When in reality, it should be called a home predation overlay zone.
Yes.
And so what it is, the left, when you're talking about the taking of property, these words of, that we often get mixed up with the left, that they invented and they created, with money being evil and this and that, they simply are a way of creating a fiction. And so the HPOZ, what's so amazing and enraging about it, the left does what it does best. It invents fictions. And they invent a fictitious history. There are many areas in Los Angeles that they now call historic preservation overlay zones because they say there's a precious history there. And in fact, there isn't any.
Yeah.
It's all a fraud in order to take property, and they take the property indirectly. Since they can't tax it outright, they create new rules, regulations, and fines when you're in one of these zones.
Yes.
And they tell homeowners, if we put you under one of these new zoning regulations, your property values will go up. It's a complete lie. They do not go up because of HPOZs, but they are going up in spite of them, because everything, since property can't be developed, they are creating an artificial scarcity.
Yes. We talked about that earlier in the show. When they do that, property values rise and taxes rise with them. So the increase in the value of that asset is not in no way benign. Not the reasons why, not the reasons that you might think. It's outrageous.
Well, but originally what I was going to call about homelessness. And then when you were talking about what you were saying, in a way, it's all combined. The homeless fraud, the property value fraud, these are all part of like a Cloward Piven way of thinking, which is to create as much chaos and anarchy as is possible in order to create more of a dictatorial takeover. And in the front page of the Larchmont Chronicle of this month, there's an article, and then there are many other letters to the editor. It's called "Reaction to Demolition is Vitriolic." And there is a home in an area west of Hancock Park that the property owners purchased it and they demoed it. And the neighbors, well, they say the neighbors are going berserk. I'm sure 99% of them are absolutely fine with it. But there's but there's a left-wing cadre and all these groups that are behind the HPOZ program. And so they say they give the name of the owner, they give the address, and so they're inciting, in effect, violence and intimidation against this homeowner. I won't give his name or the address, but there's multiple articles here. And then one person who writes in the Chronicle says, "Tragedy on Citrus tells of loss of memory, continuity, and identity."
Oh, please. Yeah. Now, these are the same people who tear down Civil War statues or statues of anybody else that they don't like. No matter how much memory or continuity those statues or books, they're banning books, just like Nazi Germany. There are books that can no longer be read, thoughts that can no longer be thought.
They're very selective with their history.
They sure are.
And so one of the writers, one of the people who wrote in said, these people, and he has their name, got exactly what they wanted. We look forward to welcoming them to the neighborhood. And then others write, "The real travesty is that we now have a morally bankrupt, lying person living in our neighborhood that sold his name and soul for a piece of dirt. Thanks for exposing him, and may karma act swiftly."
May karma act swiftly. Oh, these are really lovely, warm left-wingers. Don't you love these old witches? And the thing of it is, they've just as we pointed out early on, hidden within the under the guise of good zoning and orderly neighborhoods and smart systematic urban planning, hidden within that is a totalitarian impulse and the determination to make everybody come to the government to ask for permission to use their own property and to basically acknowledge that they hold title to their property conditionally. It is conditioned on doing whatever they tell you forever, not just at the time that you bought it. But forever, they may change their minds. They may decide that your house all of a sudden is historical and you can't change the color of your property from white to brown. You can't change the craftsman porch, no matter how leaky it is, because that's in the character of the neighborhood. And it makes some of these planned communities pale in comparison. But if you want a planned community, there's plenty of them around, and you can go there and know exactly what it's like to live in Nazi Germany. A lot of these homeowners associations are just outrageous and out of control. You don't want to live there. They're tough. On the other hand, you may find exactly the one that you want. Well, that's why we make contracts and we have restrictive covenants and homeowners associations. If you like that kind of thing, the free market will make it available. But it's quite another thing to turn all this stuff over to the government itself, and the neighborhood busybodies got nothing freaking better to do than to call up on the phone and bang their gums and come down and interfere with you. But they're out there. Oh,
But I think it's worse than busybodies.
Yeah.
These are leftist yuppie mobsters.
yeah,
And
them too.
And this is a way of just taking power and control and saying, you're not going to be in charge of your property. You're going to pay for the property. You're going to pay the taxes. You're going to pay for everything connected, but we're in control of it.
That's right.
And
right.
so this is why this particular newspaper, which I've been following for some years relative to these issues, they call it, it's the Larchmont Chronicle.
Yeah.
I call it the Larchmont Communist Chronicle. They've had so many things. They once even lionized a great work of art, they thought, of a giant statue, a head of Stalin.
Oh.
No, it wasn't Stalin. It was Lenin.
Lenin. Yeah, right. Hey, who's quibbling?
And so it's just, it goes on, and then it's connected with the city council.
Yeah.
And so when we talk of the homeless, we're creating our own crime, and we're creating our own chaos, the city council and the mayor. And it just goes on and on. This is just more evidence of it.
Yeah, it does. And, we could run a 2 or 3 hour a week program just on the city of Los Angeles and all of its bad habits. And there are many, many, many bad habits out there. And we just have to keep pushing back. And ladies and gentlemen, never forget that over half of the $8 trillion in this country is spent at the state and local level here, and that's where the vast majority of government employees come from. If you want to know where the left lives, where it generates from, it's right from the local level. There's the left wing and the Democrat Party and all these communists and so forth. They're not in Washington per se. Barack Obama's power is right out here in these neighborhoods, in your local cities, particularly in places like Los Angeles. And this is why we have to fight back at all this stuff. Well, Brent, I want to thank you for being on this evening. It's always great to talk to you, my friend. And let's make sure to connect off the air here in the next week or so and exchange greetings. Okay, my friend?
Outstanding.
All right, Brent, you take care. All right, so we're back again here. I don't know if we have somebody waiting on the phone there. Who's next up there, Brooke? We've got Carlos, my old friend from Carson. Brooke, can you hear me in there? Would you see if Todd Rubenstein is available to come in? All right. We've got somebody new who's going to be coming on following me, and we want to go ahead and get him introduced to you here as soon as he comes in. But in the meanwhile, I'll take a call from Carlos in Carson. Carlos, how are you this evening?
Oh, well, Mike, haven't talked to you. I miss talking to you. But
hey, same here.
Listen, talking about properties and property values.
Yes.
I was a realtor for a while, and back in the 90s, I remember when we had a inflationary, depressionary cycle where property values went up, and then they plummeted.
Mm-hmm.
And then back in the 2000s, they started rebounding again, and then they plummeted again. And, of course, each cycle follows a trend that's imposed really by the Federal Reserve Board.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's right. Well, property values can go up for good reasons and bad reasons. If you have a generally affluent economy with houses being built with more features and more property, more land, a rise in the value of those properties because of the rising affluence of the buyers. Well, that's wonderful. But if property values are going up because they've been made deliberately scarce, and so forth, and if property values are going up because of other issues, well then we have a problem. Yeah. Hey, Carlos. I want to go ahead.
Exactly as you were saying, the facilitation of credit by the Federal Reserve Board makes property values go up because everybody has money to buy. But then they get over leveraged, and the property values reach a limit, and then they start collapsing.
Right.
And that's when the Federal Reserve Board then restricts the issuance of loans, and that's when we run into a problem. But
well, yeah, it's a little more complex than that, but we do have those cycles. Carlos, I want to thank you for calling in and offering your 2 cents. Let's be sure to stay in touch. Right now, it is my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you Todd Rubenstein. Now, Todd I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about himself, but he's going to start up a new program that follows mine. And is your microphone live there, Todd?
Testing. Can you hear me?
Can you hear him in there, Jeff?
Jeff can hear me.
Okay, great. Yeah, so, Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself to my audience here? I encourage you to stay on and listen to Todd here. He's got a great program called American Greatness, and I just like he's going to be his inaugural show tonight, comes on right after me. So I thought that I'd welcome him to the neighborhood and introduce him to my wonderful audience. So welcome, Todd.
Hey, Mike, thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Yeah. Actually, the last few broadcasts were actually taped. So tonight is the inaugural. Yeah, it's the inaugural live.
All right.
So they get me plus my audience.
Yeah.
It's American Greatness. I'm a former prosecutor, and I you know what? We've got a great lineup, a great level of talent here at the studio. Mm-hmm. Morning programs, weekday, weekend. And I decided to finally pull the trigger after about a decade of figuring out whether I was going to do this. I wanted to add to the conversation. We are in interesting times. Mm-hmm. Of course, I like what you talk about. I like what the prior programs talk about. We have more of a crisis in California than we have in other states, but I think nationally with the temper and the body politic, we have a real big problem. So I started American Greatness. It's all things U.S. history, politics, and con law, because I believe that everybody can use an update in their American civics.
Always.
So that's
even if you've gone to law school, even if you've education is a lifelong process in history and in law. You never stop learning in either one. The mistake is when you think you have a handle on the whole thing and you stop studying. There's always more perspectives to have out there, and it's good to have a conservative lawyer with a sense of tradition, a sense of the importance of the law, and to have. I think you can build a successful program. There's so much to do out there. And so all of you out there in my audience there for Radio Free Los Angeles, I want you to be sure to stay tuned and listen to Todd. I know I'm going to be listening to him tonight. And we here wish you the very best of luck in your new endeavor here.
Well,
I know it's going to be a great addition to the lineup here. I was delighted to see your face, as you're walking up, and I was like, God, I know that guy. He's all cheery, and he's laughing and waving at me. I said, what? He's not. I said, he's with the studio. No, he's not. Then I remembered we had met each other in the hallway there with R.J. Beaton out there when you were discussing, when you're getting aboard. So we're already excited. Why don't you just stay put there for a second?
You got it.
And we're going to have one of our favorite features here. It's called Government Grifter of the Week Award. So music, maestro, please. All right. It's that time of the week here for our Government Grifter of the Week award. I don't do it nearly as well as Josh or Jonathan Wilson, but we have here our favorite Juan Tierra, who's calling in from. Where are you calling in from tonight, Juan?
The lower slopes of Mount Washington, a progressive enclave in northeast Illinois.
Oh, man, you're in the heart of it down there. What do you have for us tonight, Juan? Tell us your latest government grifter nightmare.
Well, a major theme of rodeo for Los Angeles has been the decline of civic engagement.
Yes.
And representative democracy can only survive when citizens are well-informed and actively engaged. Yet, voting and other forms of civic participation are in steep decline. Some reasons: lack of civility, social media, decline of substantive news sources, fake news, but also the failure of education to instill civic values. We got examples of these all over the place. We're back to Southeast LA County, the corridor of corruption. And here's three nominees tonight. And by the way, I'm going to let you make the decision tonight.
All right, good. I'm up for it.
All right, it's amateur night. Just kidding.
Okay. Well, I got help here. I got an Irishman here,
Okay.
Todd Rubenstein, to help me. All right.
Nominee number one, your hometown, Huntington Park.
Oh, yeah.
John Noguez, who held the offices of city clerk, city councilman, and mayor, winning election as LA County assessor in 2010. However, by October of 2012, he was arrested and charged with conspiracy,
I remember.
bribery, corruption, massive pay-to-play scheme.
Yes.
In which property tax rates are lowered by $172 million for homeowners in wealthy neighborhoods such as Beverly Hills, Brentwood, Pacific Palisades, in exchange for campaign donations.
Yes.
He was charged with taking $185,000 in bribes. However, while on leave for 2 years, 2013 and 2014, he still got over almost $500,000 in pay and benefits.
Yep, he continued to collect. Yeah, I know Noguez.
3
minutes.
Then he made bail. He's
Yeah.
still waiting a trial date. Number 2, Irwindale. Irwindale 3. The mayor, the city councilman, or councilwoman made trips to New York. Somebody signed bonds. Their presence wasn't required, but they went anyway.
Yeah.
They were entitled to $75 a day meal allowance, but they stayed in New York City and spent round up bets of $200,000. Broadway shows,
I love
high-end
it.
restaurants,
I love it.
limousine services, and the worst of all, tickets to New York Yankee baseball games.
Oh, well, you got to, broad-minded, nothing's too good for him. All right, we got 2 minutes. Number 3.
No, well, they were charged with misappropriating the funds.
Yeah.
They walked because their Shyster lawyer stalled for 4 years and statute of limitations.
Oh,
ran
now
out.
you're being hard on the profession. Okay.
Number 3, the Linwood 2.
Oh, yeah.
City Councilman Louis Byrd and Fernando Pedroza.
Mm-hmm.
2012, convicted of using increasing their pay to $330,000 and $160,000 by taking stipends from city commissions without any job duties. They use city credit cards for concerts, golf outings, and here's the beauty, as per the LA Times, a $1,500 night out in Guadalajara, Mexico, at a strip club where dancers allegedly performed sexual favors.
Really?
That's what the LA Times said.
My God.
Both
That's shocking. Shocking. All right. Okay. Drum
They
roll,
both got-
please.
They both got 4 years in prison, by the way.
All right. Okay, drum roll, please. Okay, we had the drum roll. The winner of tonight's Government Grifter of the Week award. What's that kid's name in there?
Chase Rubenstein.
Okay, the other Rubenstein kid. Who do you vote for? Number 1, number 2, or number 3 as being the Government Grifter of the Week? Number 2, all right. Number 2, he goes with the ones that the New York grifters. But my personal favorite there is number 1 because he shows you how it's done. He can go to jail and collect from jail. Hey, it's been a wonderful evening. Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Todd Rubenstein and Josh. Is it? Jason. All right. Welcome here to the neighborhood. It's good to see you here. And we'll see you again next week right here on Radio Free Los Angeles. Go to CaliforniaSchoolChoice.org. Become part of the future of educational freedom. Over and out for tonight.